Fam, what is going on? It is Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. Happy Sunday. Thank you very much for joining me. This is a look at the updated Alabama top 25 where Alabama moved. Actually, I got to update that top part of the graphic. Let me know where you're coming from inside the comment box. There was many games that had to take place. I mean, this was a game last night who certainly had to take place. Give me like 2 seconds and I'll fix that. Call line is not open. How's everybody doing this Sunday? I appreciate you guys joining me. We're going to talk about the new updated AP top 25 rankings. Alabama now in at the 11th spot. And when you look to kind of the updated top 25, you'll see here in just a second, I like where Alabama's at, and I like what happened yesterday. I mean, how could you not? I was kind of calling it upset Saturday. I didn't really anticipate a lot of these upsets to happen, but here's a look at the new AP top 25. I appreciate you guys being here. Oregon checking in at the number 1 spot, 9-0 on the season. You got Georgia at the number 2 spot, 7-1. Ohio State, 7-1. Miami, 9-0 on the season. They were actually trailing to Duke in that game. Texas at 7-1. Penn State moves to 7. I wouldn't have Penn State even in my top 10. I'm sorry. I just wouldn't. I wasn't impressed with their play. I like their quarterback a little bit, but the James Franklin does not win big games. Number 7, you got Tennessee. Number 8, Indiana. You know what? I watched Indiana a little bit against Michigan State. I do like their quarterback play. And just as Lance said, Lance brings up a great point. In 48 hours, we will not be talking about the AP again because the college football playoffs, the college football playoff rankings come out Tuesday night. So set your clocks, right, for Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. On ESPN. And that's when we get our first college football playoff ranking. So this is the last time we look at the AP top 25. We'll continue to roll through it. All right, so you got Tennessee at 7-1. They were trailing Kentucky there for a little while, but then they pulled it out, 7-1 on the season. Indiana, I do like their quarterback play. I don't know how good this team is overall, but shoot, 9-0, really quality season. BYU 8-0, they were idle this past week. Notre Dame 7-1. That win against Texas A&M, it doesn't look as impressive considering Texas A&M lost. Alabama moves from 14 to 11, and then you have Boise State sitting at 7-1. SMU at 8-1. LSU moves to 14. They were 16 last week. You got Texas A&M in at 7-2, now at number 15, and then number 16. That is Ole Miss. Iowa State moves to 17 after their first loss, and Army is 8-0. So if you want the full top 25, you can go check it out. But look, Alabama clearly, as I had on the video earlier this morning when I'm talking about the ranking and stuff like that, Alabama needed help, right? You needed some teams to start losing. And let's start with the SEC. And you did have a team that lost within the SEC, and that was Texas A&M. Texas A&M at the point in time, they were leading the SEC. Now, it's far from over, and Texas A&M still has an opportunity to make the SEC championship game should they win out. Remember, they play Texas here at the back end of their schedule, but they lost to South Carolina. And I think what that loss to South Carolina does is it actually looks good for Alabama because Alabama beat South Carolina head-to-head. South Carolina pretty much had their way with Texas A&M last night on Saturday. You also needed teams from other conferences to start losing, as we spoke about. So Iowa State, who was number 11 in last week's rankings, you saw them lose to Texas Tech. Texas Tech scores a late touchdown and gives the Cyclones its first loss of the season. And you look to kind of the Big 12 rankings, you still have BYU, who is undefeated, and who knows what will happen if those two teams are to meet. KTK, yeah, South Carolina, they're a good football team. In the ACC, I didn't see this one coming. I thought Clemson would be the aggressor in this one, but credit to Louisville, 33-21. Cardinals take down Clemson. And, man, I guess, when you look to the ACC, it's all Miami. How good is that Miami team? I mean, pretty good. They put up a ton of points. I said this yesterday. I think Miami is the best team at grass basketball. Like, if you want them to score 60, 70 points, they can do it. Quarterback playing phenomenal football, clearly. This game right here yesterday, Ohio State, Penn State, I watched the game. All right, so clearly Penn State, you saw the game. They jump off to, what was it, a 10-0 victory. Happy Valley's going crazy. I was never sweating the fact that Penn State was going to win this game. I knew Ohio State would, and they did. They controlled the rest of the game, and it didn't seem like that challenging of an environment to play in. Ohio State beats Penn State 20-13. I didn't like what happened after the game with the coach. I'm sure a lot of emotions right, in a game like that. But him calling out the fan and the fan walking out and then him ringing the victory bell, not a good look for Penn State. Following a loss, look, you lose a game, go talk to your guys, and that's it. Don't talk to the fans like you're the head football coach. I did not like that. When you look to Alabama and LSU, I mean, this game keeps getting bigger and bigger as we get closer to this next week of college football, right? So Alabama currently on this rat poison predictor on ESPN. It has a 70% chance to beat LSU. I think Alabama is now a 2-point favorite in this game. The more that we get closer to this game, I feel more confident with Alabama, right? I feel that Alabama has the edge on LSU in a couple different factors, and I think that Alabama will be able to move the ball against LSU. And I look to Alabama's previous games where they played better defenses. For example, like Tennessee, that was a really good defense. I felt Missouri, despite them being depleted, they were pretty good on defense. But I think right here, Alabama will be able to move the ball. Now, what I'm scared about, and we'll talk about this tomorrow on Monday, is Grant Nismeyer. I mean, this is probably the best quarterback that Alabama will play this season. As you can see, he's thrown for 2,600 yards on the season with 20 touchdowns. He has thrown 9 interceptions. So Alabama is ranked 4th in the country in terms of turnovers. So this is a team that gets a lot of turnovers, whether it's fumble recoveries or interceptions. But as you know, Keon Sabb's out. And while Bray Hubbard had a really good game against Missouri, Missouri is not – look, the Missouri game was great in terms of how they executed, but that team was absolutely terrible. Missouri should have never scored a touchdown, which they didn't. The backup quarterback, clearly not it. That is not going to be the same as going to Death Valley to take on LSU. So we'll dive more into this game clearly as we move closer to it, but just kind of running through the AP Top 25 and a couple other things to hit on this fine Sunday, which is November 3rd. Here's a look at the SEC football standings. All right, so stay with me. This is, and I said this before the beginning of the season, this college football year is going to be like something that we have never seen before. There's going to be so much parity. I didn't know which teams would beat which ones, and you have Auburn, they're about to be relegated to the Big 12 or to the ACC. You know, they're at the bottom. Kidding there. But you look at the top teams, right? So Georgia moved to the number 1 spot. And why are they ahead of Texas A&M? Well, overall they are 7-1, and Texas A&M is 7-2. That's part of the tie-breaking criteria, is they have an overall better winning percentage. Then you go to Tennessee, who's at 4-1 in conference play. Then you go to LSU, and you have Texas, and then you have Alabama. Now, this is a pivotal game for Alabama. Look, there's some scenarios out there, and we can break them down to where Alabama still gets into the SEC championship game. I don't want to get to the SEC championship game. Honestly, that's another game of wear and tear on your team. And I think, honestly, if you don't win the SEC championship game, you might be penalized for losing late in the season. So it might be better to finish kind of in that 3rd and 4th spot in the SEC, to where the parity is going to carry, your strength of schedule is going to carry, right? And if you're Alabama, you have a win over Georgia. So you kind of have to want Georgia to win out and be the SEC champs, because then you could say, hey, well, we beat them head-to-head, and, you know, we won our remaining games, and we're 10-2 with the win over the SEC champs, right? So that's kind of how you want to look at it when you're looking at the SEC standings. Hey, Bearsy, what's up, man? I appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much for kicking it off on Sunday. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So there's the standings right there, and there's some pivotal games coming through the back end of the season. Like, for example, Texas A&M still has to play Texas, Alabama still has to play LSU, and Georgia still has to play Tennessee, right? You have Ole Miss, who will also play Georgia. So there's some really marquee games towards the back end of the season, and of course, I know the Iron Bowl, the game against what's up, Jeremy? We always want to be in the big game. I appreciate the feedback, man. What's up? I don't think so, Jeremy, because if you have followed college football and you're looking at kind of the scenarios, I honestly feel that the team on the back end that doesn't win the SEC championship game will be highly penalized. And by the way, I appreciate you being here, man. If this is your first time, my name is Kyle Henderson, the Bama Football on YouTube. Honestly, just like a month-to-month guy, have 2 kids. This is what I do for a full-time basis. And, you know, I've lived in Tuscaloosa for 8 years. So I appreciate you being here, man. But this is kind of a look. I mean, Ole Miss plays Georgia, and so does Tennessee. So here we are on the back end. And Georgia does look good, and they're playing some really good football. And I think the great thing about Georgia is the fact that Kirby Smart gets these guys to play kind of as an underdog. And that's good for Alabama because Alabama has the win head-to-head. And I think you're right, Andy. You can't overlook Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is kind of one of those rat poison games, right? Oklahoma, they're depleted, but as Coach Saban would always say, that team still has pride and performance on how they played. All right, so if you go to ESPN, now anybody can do this, right? Go to ESPN and type in ESPN Playoff Predictor. It's pretty cool to check out because you can do every single team that has a shot to make the playoffs, and it gives you a percentage. So right now, Alabama's chance to make the actual playoffs is 53%. Now, of course, if they continue to win, that number climbs up, right? So they give you some data points. So let me break it down. And this is all by ESPN. So you can break it down by, and this is the scenario that I set up. I put Alabama wins out, and they do not make the SEC championship game. With those components being 10-2 and not making the SEC championship game, this is what it came out with. Now, ESPN came out with even the winner on all this scenario. So, for example, it gave Alabama an 8 spot, and it gave them a 97% chance to make the playoffs, a 60% chance to host a first-round game, and a 37% chance to be a first-round visitor. So, look, I'm telling you, when you go back and you look at the AP rankings, it's not going to mean anything because just because they're ranked number 11 in the AP, that has nothing to do with what's going to come out on Tuesday night. Nothing. I mean, Alabama could very well be number 8 in the college football playoff rankings because of that win against Georgia, right? So in this scenario, I like this because you have Indiana who would be coming to Tuscaloosa, right? The winner would play the ACC champ, which would be Miami, right? The 5-12 would be Georgia and Tennessee, rematch of a SEC conference game. You'd have BYU taking on Georgia. And this one, as you can see, it has BYU beating Georgia. Like, we know that that's not going to happen. And then on the other side, it gave Oregon the number 2, Penn State the number 7, Washington State, that's interesting, as the number 10, Notre Dame, and Boise State. So you can play with all those scenarios if you just type in ESPN Playoff Predictor. But look, Alabama clearly the favorite going into this game, and I feel really confident for a lot of different reasons. And one of the graphs that I do talk about when I look to Alabama versus LSU is the numbers for LSU's defense. Number 63 in the country, as opposed to Alabama 44, right? And you look to third down defense. LSU has had issues on the defensive side of the ball, and I think with Alabama having 2 weeks to prep for the LSU Tigers, I think that Alabama will have a really good game plan. And I think they know. Look, they know that their back is against the wall. They know that every single game is a playoff elimination game, which is fine. So it's up to Alabama's coaches, the team, kind of the mentality that they have at this point of the season to just continue to win out, right? I mean, you can look at all these different scenarios. You can look at all the different stuff, all the different charts, all the different graphs. The main thing is if Alabama wins out, then Alabama is in the playoffs, all right? It's going to be really hard to leave a 10-2 team out of the playoffs. Let me ask you, I'll just go to the comment box known as undefeated. Let me ask you, if Alabama finishes 10-2, yes or no, are they in the playoffs? Type Y for yes, type N for no. I absolutely think they're in the playoffs with a win at 10-2. Now, I don't know if they make the SEC title game, as I was mentioning earlier. I don't think it makes a difference. I think the quality of the season, but let me say this. I do feel that Alabama is held to a different standard on the back end of the season, right? Like, we all know that Vanderbilt is not the Vanderbilt of the past, but I still think Alabama will be held to a different standard. Like, for whatever reason, this always happens to Alabama. Like, they're playing some tight games, teams will play them close, and they're always kind of held to a different standard. I think the parity of this year is something that we weren't ready for. All these teams in the SEC are absolutely dominating. So as you can see, I mean, 10-2, everybody feels that Alabama would make the playoffs. So I feel the same way. Just got to win out, right? Just win and you're in. It don't matter. And honestly, I feel that if you win, you're hosting a playoff game too. And then you start to think about how many teams would make the playoffs, right, from the SEC. And I think when you look to the teams that would make the playoffs, I mean, shoot, Georgia would be in, Tennessee, Texas, and Bama, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4 at least. KTK asks inside the comment box, if Ohio State loses again, is it Bama or Ohio State? Well, yeah, we'll talk about some of those scenarios anyways. So appreciate it. But it'll be fun to track. And I appreciate you guys popping on, today for the show. I mean, there's so many scenarios to go over, but I think what happened yesterday with these games, right? A&M losing, Iowa State losing, like we knew these teams weren't going to go undefeated. This one was surprising to me, was Clemson losing to Louisville and Penn State dropping to Ohio State. I saw this a million miles away. But I appreciate you guys. My main show is tomorrow on Monday. It's my 2-hour show. I'll take it to Coach Kalen DeBoer. We'll also have Brian Kelly as well. So my Monday show is kind of where we load up and we talk all things Alabama football going into the season. In fact, I'll have a Monday morning quarterback where you guys can call in and give your opinion as well. I appreciate you guys. So coming to you one more time from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This was just an AP Top 25 breakdown. My name is Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you very much for being here, allowing me to be a content creator on YouTube. I'm just a YouTuber. That's it. I'm just a YouTuber, and that's all I'll ever be. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for joining. Have a beautiful day. Enjoy your football on Sunday. Be good people, and I'll catch up with you soon. See you guys.